The year was 2287. Humanity had finally taken its place among the stars. After decades of watching and waiting, humans had joined the Galactic Council. This was a group of 47 different alien species. They came from all corners of the galaxy. Together they made rules, shared technology, and kept the peace. The other aliens saw humans as the new kids on the block. They called them a young race. Most of these alien civilizations had been traveling through space for thousands of years. Humans had only been out there for less than a century. But even though they were new, humans had already shown they were good at talking things out. They were also smart at making deals. Many aliens liked working with them. On this day, a huge human ship called the New Dawn was moving through deep space. It was not a warship. It was a colony ship. Inside were 15,000 people. They were all going to start a new life on a faraway planet. Among them were 3,000 children. These kids laughed and played in the ship's halls. They went to school in special rooms. They dreamed about seeing their new home world for the first time. The journey had been going well. Everything was peaceful. Then something changed. A fleet of alien ships appeared on the New Dawn sensors. The ships belonged to the Vakrine Empire. The Vakrine were reptilian aliens. Their skin looked like dark green scales. Their eyes were cold and yellow. They had sharp teeth that showed when they spoke. The Vakrine were known across the galaxy as warriors. They took what they wanted. They ruled many planets through fear. The Vakrine commander sent a message to the New Dawn. His voice was rough and demanding. He said his ships would be boarding the human vessel. He claimed it was for an inspection. He said the Galactic Council rules allowed it. The captain of the New Dawn checked the regulations. The Vakrine commander was technically correct. There was an old rule that allowed this kind of inspection. It was rarely used, but it was legal. The captain had no choice. He allowed the Vakrine soldiers to come aboard. The humans thought it would be a quick check of their cargo and papers. They thought the Vakrine would leave soon after. They were very wrong. The Vakrine soldiers stomped through the New Dawn's corridors. They carried weapons. Their boots made loud sounds on the metal floors. When they reached the family sections, they demanded that all children be separated from their parents. They said the children needed to be processed separately. They said it was procedure. The human parents refused. They held their children close. Fear filled their eyes. The mothers and fathers formed protective circles around the young ones. They asked why this was necessary. They begged the Vakrine to just check their documents and leave. The Vakrine commander grew angry. He saw the humans' refusal as disrespect. His yellow eyes grew narrow. He gave an order to his soldiers. What happened next would change everything. The Vakrine soldiers attacked. They grabbed children by their arms. They pushed parents aside. When the humans tried to protect their kids, the soldiers used force. They hit people with their weapons. They fired stun rounds into the crowd. But some soldiers used their real weapons. The sounds of crying children filled the air. Parents screamed. Some fought back with their bare hands. But they were no match for armed soldiers. Blood spilled on the clean floors of the colony ship. When it was over, 23 children lay dead. Their small bodies were still. 67 more were injured. Some had broken bones. Others had burns from the weapons. All of them were terrified. The Vakrine commander stood in the middle of the chaos. He looked at the crying humans with disgust. He activated a broadcast. His message went out to the whole ship. It also went to nearby space stations and relay points. His words were cold. He showed no regret. The commander said that inferior species must learn to obey. He said these small ones had died teaching an important lesson. He said humans needed to understand their place in the galaxy. He said the Vakrine Empire would not tolerate disrespect from such a young race. One man watched everything through the security cameras. His name was Marcus Chen. He was a father. He had been in a different section of the ship when the Vakrine boarded. He ran toward the family section when he heard the alarms. But the Vakrine had locked the doors. He could only watch on a small screen. Marcus watched as his 8-year-old daughter Lily tried to run to him. A Vakrine soldier grabbed her. She screamed for her daddy. Marcus pounded on the locked door. He could hear her voice through the metal. Then he heard the weapons fire. The screen showed Lily falling. Her small hand reached out toward the camera. Toward him. Then she moved no more. Marcus fell to his knees. His scream echoed through the empty corridor. It was a sound of pure pain, a sound that came from the deepest part of his soul. The transmission feed cut out, but the image of his daughter's last moment would stay with him forever. The Vakreen soldiers left the New Dawn soon after. They took some supplies as payment for their inspection. They did not help with the wounded. They did not care about the dead. They simply returned to their ships and flew away. The captain of the New Dawn immediately sent emergency messages. The news traveled fast through human communication networks. Within hours, every human world knew what happened. Every space station received the details. Every human ship in the galaxy heard about the 23 children. The alien species in the Galactic Council also received the news. Most of them did not understand why the humans were so upset. Yes, some young ones had died. That was unfortunate, but it was only 23 individuals out of 15,000. The Vakreen had used their legal rights. Why would this cause such anger? They did not understand humans at all. They did not know what they had just witnessed. This was not just an unfortunate incident. This was not just a legal gray area. This was the moment everything would change. The galaxy was about to learn a very important lesson. The galaxy was about to discover what happens when you hurt human children. The Vakreen had made the biggest mistake in their empire's long history, and humanity was about to show them exactly what comes next. The news spread like fire through dry grass. Every human colony received the transmission. Every station heard the broadcast. Every ship in deep space got the message. 23 children were dead. The Vakreen Empire had killed them. On Earth, people stopped what they were doing. They watched the footage in silence. Mothers held their own children closer. Fathers clenched their fists. The images showed small bodies lying still. They showed parents crying over their lost ones. They showed the Vakreen commanders' cold speech about teaching lessons. The same thing happened on Mars, on Europa Station, on New Terra, and on every human settlement. Everyone saw what happened. Everyone felt the same anger rising in their chests. Young and old, soldier and civilian, rich and poor. For once, all of humanity was united in the same feeling. At the same time, the Galactic Council was having an emergency meeting. The council chamber was a massive room that floated in space. Representatives from all 47 species sat in their designated areas. The human ambassador, Elena Vasquez, stood at the speaking platform. Her face was tight with barely controlled emotion. She played the security footage from the New Dawn. The aliens watched with various expressions. Some looked uncomfortable. Others seemed indifferent. A few showed what might have been sympathy, but most looked like they were watching a minor incident report. When the footage ended, Ambassador Vasquez spoke. Her voice was steady, but everyone could hear the pain underneath. She asked for immediate action against the Vakreen Empire. She demanded justice for the murdered children. She called for sanctions and punishment. The council president, a tall being made mostly of crystalline structures, responded in a calm voice. He said the council would form a committee to investigate the incident. He said they would review all the facts. He called it a regrettable situation. He promised they would issue a report in 6 months. 6 months. They wanted to wait 6 months while they formed committees and wrote reports. Ambassador Vasquez stood very still. She looked at each council member. Then she asked a simple question. She asked if the Vakreen had done this before. She asked if they had hurt the children of other species. The chamber became quiet. Too quiet. Several council members looked away. The president's crystalline form seemed to dim slightly. Finally, an old alien from the Trell species spoke up. His voice was tired. He confirmed that yes, the Vakreen had done similar things before. They had hurt the young ones of at least 6 other species over the past century. Ambassador Vasquez felt her blood turn cold. She asked why nothing had been done. The Trell representative explained that it was technically within the Vakreen's sovereign enforcement rights. The old regulations gave them this power. Changing the rules would require unanimous agreement from all council members. The Vakreen would never agree to limit their own power. The ambassador looked around the chamber. She saw the truth in their eyes. The council was not going to help. They had let this happen before. They would let it happen again. These 23 children would become just another report. Just another regrettable incident. Just another line in the history books, unless humanity did something about it. Back on Earth, the human government was meeting an emergency session. The United Earth Council filled every seat. Screens showed similar meetings happening on every major colony world. Mars was meeting. Europa was meeting. New Terra was meeting. Titan was meeting. All of humanity was talking at once, and they were all saying the same thing. Something had to be done. The debate was not about whether to act. It was about how far to go. Some wanted sanctions. Some wanted to cut all contact with the Vakreen, but most wanted more. Much more. A vote was called. The measure passed with only 3 votes against it. Humanity would invoke Article 7 of their Galactic Council membership agreement. This was a clause that almost no species had ever used. It allowed a member species to temporarily suspend all treaty obligations during a species-wide emergency. In simple terms, it meant humanity was stepping outside the normal rules. They were free to act however they needed to act. Ambassador Vasquez returned to the council chamber one last time. The other species were still debating about forming their investigation committee. They were arguing about who would serve on it. They were discussing schedules and procedures. She walked to the center of the chamber. She did not wait for permission to speak. Her voice rang out clear and strong. She announced that humanity was invoking Article 7. She stated that all human obligations under council law were suspended. She said humanity would handle this matter in their own way. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Several species tried to speak at once. The council president called for order. He said this was highly irregular. He said they should discuss this decision. Ambassador Vasquez held up her hand for silence. When the chamber quieted, she delivered her final message. Her words were simple and direct. She said the council had 72 hours to evacuate any non-Vakreen vessels from Vakreen territory. After that time, humanity would not be responsible for any ships that remained in that region of space. She paused, looking at each species representative. Then she spoke her last words to the council. She said that what came next was on them. They had the power to stop the Vakreen decades ago. They chose to do nothing. Now humanity would do something. History would remember who made which choice. Ambassador Vasquez turned and walked out of the chamber. She did not look back. Behind her, the council members sat in stunned silence. Slowly, they began to understand. The humans were not asking for permission. They were not pleading for help. They were giving a warning. The Vakreen representative laughed. It was a harsh, grating sound. He said the humans were emotional fools. He said they were overreacting to a minor disciplinary action. He said 23 casualties were insignificant. He reminded the council that humanity was a young species with a small military. They could not possibly threaten the mighty Vakreen Empire. Some council members nodded. They thought the Vakreen was right. Humans were known for being emotional. They probably just needed to make some angry speeches and pound their fists. Then they would calm down and accept the council's investigation process. But the old Trell representative did not nod. He had studied humanity for many years. He knew their history. He knew what they had done to each other before they united. He knew about their world wars. He knew about their capacity for violence when pushed too far. He spoke quietly to those sitting near him. He told them to watch carefully. He said the galaxy was about to see something it had never seen before. He said the humans had a saying, "Do not poke the bear." The Vakreen had not just poked the bear. They had killed the bear's cubs. The other species did not understand what he meant. Not yet, but they would understand soon. Very soon. The 72-hour countdown had begun. The message went out across all human space at the same moment. It was not a request. It was not a suggestion. It was an order that came from the highest levels of government. Every military vessel was to prepare for deployment. Every reserve soldier was to report for duty. Every defense contractor was to shift to maximum production. Humanity was going to war. Within 12 hours, something remarkable happened. Something that had never been seen in galactic history. Every single human military ship began moving. They did not move to defensive positions. They all moved in the same direction. Toward Vakreen space on Earth. Massive factories that usually made civilian products stopped their normal work. Within a day, they were making ammunition. They were building ship parts. They were producing weapons. The entire human economy shifted like a machine changing gears. Everything was now focused on one single purpose. Mars did the same thing. Europa did the same thing. Every human colony and station made the same choice. No one needed to force them. No government had to threaten punishment for those who refused. Everyone simply did it. They did it for 23 children they had never met. They did it because those children were human. They did it because it could have been anyone's child. Something else happened that shocked the galaxy even more. Thousands of civilian ships volunteered to help. Cargo haulers offered to carry supplies. Passenger ships said they would transport troops. Mining vessels said they would gather resources. Rich corporations donated entire fleets. Poor families sent their personal shuttles. An old woman on Europa sent her late husband's small transport ship. It was worth almost nothing, but it was all she had. She sent a message with it that said her grandson was on the New Dawn. He had been injured but survived. She wanted the Vakreen to pay for hurting him. A young man on Mars sent his racing ship. It was fast but had no weapons. He said to use it however it was needed. His sister had died on the New Dawn. Her name was Sarah. She was 6 years old. Story after story came in. Ship after ship was offered. The military started converting civilian vessels into support ships, supply carriers, medical frigates, troop transports, communication relays. Every ship that could not fight could still help in some way. The other species in the galaxy watched all this with growing confusion. They had databases about human behavior. They had studied human psychology. According to their models, this should not be happening. Humans should be angry, yes, but this level of mobilization did not make sense. It was not logical. Alien military analysts studied the numbers. They sent reports to their governments. The reports all said the same thing. Humanity was mobilizing 40% of their entire population for the war effort. 40%! That number was incredible. Most species considered 10% to be total war. 20% was unthinkable. But 40%? The analysts tried to understand it. They looked for economic reasons. They looked for political motivations. They searched for hidden agendas. But there was nothing hidden. The reason was simple and clear. The Vakreen had killed human children. That was all. That was everything. One Trell observer wrote in his report that humans seemed to have a cultural programming that made them react this way to threats against their young. He said it was similar to what some species showed toward their own offspring. But humans extended this feeling to all human children, not just their own. He said this made them unpredictable and potentially very dangerous. Marcus Chen, the father who lost his daughter Lily, stood in line at a military recruitment office. He was 52 years old. That was much older than the usual recruitment age. But the military was accepting volunteers of all ages now. They needed everyone. The young sergeant at the desk looked at Marcus's application. She saw his age. She started to explain that he might be better suited for support roles. Then she saw his address. He had been on the New Dawn. She looked up at his face. She saw something in his eyes that made her stop talking. She stamped his application approved without another word. Marcus was not alone. Millions of civilians joined up. People who had never fired a weapon in their lives. People who had desk jobs and quiet lives. Parents who had children of their own at home. They all volunteered. They left their comfortable lives behind. The training camps filled up. Then they expanded. Then they expanded again. Drill sergeants worked around the clock. Veterans came out of retirement to help train the new recruits. Everyone who knew how to fight taught those who did not. An alien observer from the Galactic Council came to Earth. Her name was Zelana. She was from a peaceful species that had never understood warfare. She was supposed to write a report about human military mobilization. Her government wanted to know if humanity was really serious about attacking the Vakreen. Zelana visited a training facility. She watched thousands of humans learning to fight. She asked to speak with some of them. She wanted to understand why they were doing this. The military allowed her to conduct interviews. She asked a young woman why she enlisted. The woman said her little brother had been on the New Dawn. He lived, but he had nightmares now. He was only 5 years old. He woke up screaming every night. She wanted to make sure no other 5-year-old had to have those nightmares. Zelana asked an older man why he volunteered. He said he had 3 grandchildren. They were safe on Earth, but those children on the New Dawn could have been his grandchildren. Could have been anyone's grandchildren. Someone had to show the galaxy that hurting children was not acceptable. She asked a teenage boy who looked too young to be there. He said he lied about his age. He said his cousin died on the New Dawn. Her name was Emma. She used to send him drawings she made. The last drawing showed stars. She wanted to see the stars up close. Now she never would, Zelana wrote her report. She sent it back to her government. But she also sent a private message to the council. She warned them. She said the humans were serious, more serious than anyone understood. She said they were not going to stop. She said the Vacrine Empire had made a terrible mistake. Ambassador Vasquez was asked by another council member to explain humanity's actions. The council member was trying to be diplomatic. He suggested that perhaps humanity was overreacting. He said that from a purely numerical standpoint, 23 deaths out of 15,000 people was a very small percentage. He asked why humanity would risk so much for such a small loss. Ambassador Vasquez looked at him for a long moment. Then she spoke slowly and clearly. She said it did not matter if it was 23 children or one child. They were children. They were humans, and they were killed by someone who thought humans would do nothing about it. She said the Vacrine believed humans would just accept this. They believed wrong, she continued. She said if humanity did nothing now, the next species to join the council would learn that their children could be hurt too. That the council would do nothing. That might made right. She said humanity was drawing a line that said children were off limits. Any children, all children, everywhere. The 72 hours expired. The deadline passed. All non-Vacrine ships had evacuated from Vacrine space. The region was clear. Now there was nothing between human forces and their target. Human fleets arrived at the Vacrine border. The sight made even veteran military observers pause. Over 2,000 ships. Capital ships, cruisers, destroyers, frigates, carriers, support vessels, medical ships. It was the largest single fleet any species had ever assembled. The Vacrine Empire saw them coming. They laughed. They had been laughing for days. They sent messages mocking the humans. They said humans were weak. They said human ships were inferior. They said the mighty Vacrine military would crush this little fleet easily. The human fleet did not respond to the messages. They did not make threats. They did not demand surrender. They simply crossed the border and kept coming. The galaxy watched and waited to see what would happen next. The first battle happened 3 weeks after the incident. The Vacrine military met the human fleet with confidence. They had been fighting wars for over 1,000 years. Their empire had conquered dozens of worlds. They had never lost a major conflict. These humans were newcomers to space. This would be an easy victory. They were wrong. The battle began when Vacrine ships opened fire first. Their weapons were powerful. They had better shields than human ships. Their technology was more advanced in many ways. On paper, they should have won easily. But war is not fought on paper. The human ships charged forward. They did not retreat when damaged. They did not pull back to regroup. They kept coming. When a human ship lost its shields, it kept fighting. When it lost weapons, it rammed enemy vessels. When it was crippled and could not move, the crew kept firing whatever still worked until the ship broke apart. The Vacrine had never seen anything like it. Their psychological profile said that most species would retreat when casualties reached 30%. Humans kept fighting at 50% casualties, at 60%, at 70%. They simply did not stop. One human destroyer, the Iron Fury, had its entire bridge destroyed. The captain was dead. Half the crew was gone. But the chief engineer took command from the engine room. She flew the ship straight into a Vacrine cruiser. Both ships were destroyed. But the cruiser was twice the size and had 3 times the crew. The trade favored humanity. Another human ship, the Remember Lily, was named after Marcus Chen's daughter. When it was surrounded by 4 Vacrine fighters, the crew chose to overload their reactor. They turned their own ship into a bomb. They took all 4 enemy ships with them. 20 humans died. 200 Vacrine died. The math was brutal but simple. The galaxy watched the battle footage in shock. Military experts from peaceful species had to look away. They had never seen such violence, such determination, such complete disregard for personal survival. The humans fought like they had nothing to lose, like life meant less than victory. But humans were not just throwing themselves away blindly. They were smart about it. They learned from every battle. They adapted their tactics. They found the weaknesses in Vacrine ships and exploited them ruthlessly. Human commanders made decisions that prioritized mission success over crew survival, and the crews followed those orders without question. Some human ships did offer to accept surrender from Vacrine vessels. Any ship that powered down its weapons and surrendered was allowed to leave. The humans kept their word. They let those ships go. But any ship that refused to surrender was destroyed completely. There was no middle ground. Surrender or die. Those were the only choices. After that first battle, the Vakreen stopped laughing. They had lost 40 ships. The humans lost 70, but the Vakreen had lost more crew, more resources, and more importantly, they had lost their confidence. The humans had shown they would pay any price, accept any casualties, sacrifice anything to win. The battles continued, week after week, system after system. The human fleet pushed deeper into Vakreen space. They did not slow down. They did not pause to celebrate victories. They just kept moving forward, always forward. Human Marines boarded Vakreen stations. The fighting was close and brutal. The Vakreen were physically stronger than humans. They had claws and sharp teeth. They had thicker skin, but the humans fought with a fury that overcame physical disadvantages. They used tactics that the Vakreen had never encountered. They fought in ways that made no sense according to military doctrine. One boarding action became famous across the galaxy. A team of human Marines were trying to capture a Vakreen command station. They were outnumbered 5-1. The Vakreen commander offered them a chance to surrender. The human sergeant asked if there were any children on the station. When told no, he said then they would take it by force. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the humans held the station. The survival rate for the human Marines was 5%. But they completed their mission. Marcus Chen was now a decorated soldier. He had been promoted 3 times in 6 weeks. He led a Marine division that specialized in station assaults. His units had the highest success rate. They also had the highest casualty rate. But volunteers kept requesting to join his division. Everyone knew what it meant. They did not care. They wanted to be part of it. Before each mission, Marcus would tell his troops about his daughter. He would describe how she loved to draw pictures of stars, how she wanted to be an artist when she grew up, how she had been so excited to see space. He told them to remember that when things got hard. Remember why they were fighting. Remember what the Vakreen took from humanity. The troops always remembered. They fought harder after hearing his words. They pushed through injuries that should have stopped them. They completed missions that should have been impossible. Because they were not just fighting for victory, they were fighting for Lily, for Emma, for Sarah, for all 23 children whose names were engraved on every human warship. 6 weeks into the war, humanity had conquered or destroyed 60% of the Vakreen military capability. The Vakreen Empire, which had ruled for over a millennium, was crumbling. Their remaining ships fled before human fleets. Their commanders made mistakes because they were afraid. Fear was something they had always inflicted on others. Now they felt it themselves. The Vakreen Emperor finally understood his mistake. He sent a message to the Galactic Council. He requested emergency mediation. He asked for a ceasefire. He said the Vakreen Empire was willing to negotiate peace terms. The Council called for an immediate ceasefire. They sent messages to humanity begging them to stop. They said enough blood had been spilled. They said this level of destruction was unnecessary. They promised to help broker a fair peace. Humanity ignored them. The human fleet did not stop. Not for the Council. Not for the Emperor. Not for anyone. They had given the Vakreen a chance to avoid this. That chance was not offered twice. Ambassador Vasquez was contacted directly by the Council President. He was no longer calm and professional. His crystalline form flashed with agitation. He said humanity had made their point. He said the Vakreen had learned their lesson. He begged her to call off the attack. She asked him a simple question. She asked where the Council was when the Vakreen hurt the children of 6 other species. She asked why the lesson needed to be learned now instead of decades ago. She asked why humanity should stop when the Council never even started. The President had no answer. Ambassador Vasquez told him that humanity would decide when enough was enough. Not the Council. Not the Vakreen. Only humanity. She ended the transmission. The human fleet continued its advance. They were heading for the Vakreen homeworld. Every species in the galaxy understood what that meant. This was not just about revenge anymore. This was about removing the Vakreen Empire from power. This was about making sure they could never hurt anyone's children ever again. The old Trell representative watched everything from the council chamber. Other species asked him if humanity would really destroy the entire Vakrine Empire. He told them to watch the humans carefully. He told them to see the way they named their ships after the dead children, to see how they fought with faces that showed no fear, to see how they never stopped pushing forward. He said humanity had shown the galaxy who they really were. They were not the young, peaceful species that everyone thought. They were something much more dangerous. They were a species that would burn down the entire galaxy, rather than let their children be hurt without consequence. He said the Vakrine made one critical mistake. They thought 23 was a small number, but to humanity every single child mattered. Each one was precious. Each one was worth any sacrifice. The human fleet arrived at the Vakrine homeworld's outer defenses. The final battle was about to begin. 3 months after the incident on the New Dawn, human ships surrounded the Vakrine homeworld. The mighty empire that had ruled for over 1,000 years was finished. Their military was destroyed. Their colonies were occupied. Their economy was ruined. They had nothing left. The human fleet did not fire on the homeworld. They did not bombard cities. They did not kill civilians. They simply waited in orbit. The message was clear. Surrender or face destruction. The choice was theirs. The Vakrine Emperor had no choice left. He sent a transmission agreeing to complete and unconditional surrender. He asked what terms humanity would demand. He hoped for some mercy, some compromise, some way to save what remained of his empire. The Galactic Council tried one more time to intervene. They sent a delegation to the human fleet. They begged humanity to show restraint. They said the Vakrine Empire should be allowed to exist. They said total destruction of a major power would destabilize the entire region. They offered to help negotiate reasonable terms. Ambassador Vasquez met with them. She listened to their concerns. Then she presented humanity's terms. The terms were not up for negotiation. Not one word could be changed. Accept them all or reject them all. Those were the only options. The terms were harsh but clear. First, every single Vakrine who was involved in the attack on the New Dawn would be turned over to human authorities. They would be tried in human courts. They would face human justice. No exceptions. Second, the Vakrine Empire would be completely dismantled. It would no longer exist as a political entity. The homeworld would govern itself, but it would have no power over other worlds. All conquered territories would be freed. All subjugated species would be released. Third, human forces would occupy key Vakrine worlds for 50 years. During that time, a new government would be established. A government that respected life. A government that protected the innocent. A government that would never again think it was acceptable to hurt children. Fourth, the Vakrine would pay reparations, not just to humanity but to every species they had wronged. The amount was staggering. It would take 3 generations to pay it all, but every credit would be paid. Every single one. Fifth, and most important, a new law would be added to the Galactic Council Charter. Any violence against juveniles of any species would be considered an act of war against all council members. Not just an incident to investigate, not just something to form a committee about, an actual act of war. Every species would be obligated to respond with force. The council delegation was stunned. These terms were more severe than anything they had imagined. They said the Vakrine would never accept such conditions. They said it would be better to keep fighting than to agree to this. Ambassador Vasquez told them the Vakrine could choose to keep fighting if they wanted. The human fleet would be happy to continue. She said humanity had already paid the cost, already accepted the casualties. They could finish what they started. The only question was whether the galaxy wanted to rebuild one empire or bury it. The delegation took the terms to the Vakrine Emperor. They told him these were the only options. Accept or be destroyed. There was no middle ground. No room for compromise. The humans had made that very clear. The Emperor read the terms. He had advisors who said they should reject them, who said they should fight to the last Vakrine rather than accept such humiliation. But the Emperor was old. He was tired, and he finally understood what his commanders had done. They had not just killed 23 humans. They had awakened something that should have stayed sleeping. The Emperor accepted all the terms. Every single one. He had no choice. The Vakrine Empire ceased to exist that day. After over 1,000 years of conquest and pride, it ended not with a glorious battle, but with a signature on a document. The trials began soon after. The Vakreen soldiers who attacked the New Dawn were brought before human courts. The commander who ordered the attack was the first to be tried. His trial was broadcast across the entire galaxy. Every species watched. The evidence was presented. The security footage was shown. The testimonies of survivors were heard. The commander showed no remorse. Even during his trial, he insisted he had done nothing wrong. He said he was enforcing legitimate authority. He said the humans had disobeyed. He said the deaths were their own fault for resisting. The human judge listened to everything. She was a grandmother herself. She had 5 grandchildren. When it came time for the verdict, she spoke clearly. Guilty on all counts. 23 counts of murder, 67 counts of assault, numerous other charges. The commander was sentenced to life imprisonment. He would spend the rest of his days in a human prison. As the guards led him away, he made one final statement. He said that humanity had destroyed an entire empire over 23 lives. He said it was irrational. He said humans were crazy. The judge stopped him. She told him to look at the gallery. The families of the victims sat there. The parents who lost children, the siblings who lost brothers and sisters, the survivors who would carry scars forever. She told him to look at their faces and understand. She said humanity did not destroy an empire for 23 lives. They did it to teach the galaxy a lesson. They did it to draw a line. They did it so that every species would know there are consequences for hurting children. Any children? All children. Everywhere, she said the Vakreen could call it irrational if they wanted. But now every species in the galaxy knew. If you hurt human children, this is what happens. This is what comes next. Totaiva. Complete destruction, no mercy. How compromised, the commander had no response. He was taken away. The trial ended. Justice, as humans understood it, had been served. On Earth, a memorial was built. It was placed in the center of the capital city. 23 small statues stood in a circle. Each one showed a child. Each one was made to look exactly like the child it represented. They held hands together, looking up at the sky. Marcus Chen visited the memorial every week. He would stand in front of the statue of his daughter Lily. It showed her the way he remembered her best. Smiling, happy, full of dreams about seeing the stars. Other families came too. They stood by their children's statues. They remembered. They cried. They honored the memory of those who were lost. But Marcus was never alone. Thousands of people came to the memorial every day, people who had no connection to the victims, people who just wanted to pay their respects, people who wanted to remember why humanity fought, why they sacrificed, why they would do it all again if they had to. The Galactic Council held a special session 6 months after the war ended. They voted on the new law that humanity had demanded, the law that would make violence against any species' children an act of war. Some species wanted to vote against it. They thought it went too far. But they remembered what happened to the Vakreen. They remembered human ships surrounding the homeworld. They voted yes. The law passed unanimously. It was officially named the Lily Accords after Marcus Chen's daughter. Now and forever, the galaxy would know her name, would remember what her death led to, would understand that children were protected by the strongest law ever written. Humanity's reputation in the galaxy changed completely. They were no longer seen as the young race, no longer seen as inexperienced newcomers. Now they were known as the protectors. Species that valued peace looked to humanity as allies. Species that relied on strength respected humanity as equals. Species that preyed on the weak feared humanity above all others. Years passed. New species joined the Galactic Council. When they did, they received the standard welcome package. It contained all the rules and regulations. It contained the history of the Council. And it contained the story of what happened to the Vakreen Empire. New members were told about the 23 children. They were shown the footage of the attack. They were told about humanity's response. They were told about the Lily Accords. They were told all of this for one reason, so they would understand, so they would never make the same mistake the Vakreen made. Ambassador Vasquez eventually retired. But before she did, she addressed the council one final time. New representatives had joined. Young species who had not witnessed the war. She wanted to make sure they understood. She stood at the speaking platform and looked at each representative. She spoke simply and clearly. She welcomed them to the galactic community. She told them about all the wonderful things they would experience. The trade, the cultural exchange, the friendship between species, But she also told them about the rules. The most important rule. The rule that could never be broken. She said that in this galaxy, in this council, children were sacred. All children. Every species. No exceptions. She told them that 23 human children had taught the galaxy this lesson. Their lives had purchased this protection for every child in every species across all the stars. She said humanity paid that price willingly, paid it without hesitation, paid it in blood and fire and tears. Then she delivered her final warning. She said humanity would pay that price again if necessary. She said any species that forgot this lesson would learn it the hard way. She said the Vacrine Empire used to rule hundreds of worlds. Now they ruled one. She said that was the cost of hurting children. She looked directly at the newest council members and spoke her last words as ambassador.